all witnesses, please make sure that you fill out a witness form and turn it in before you present, and we will take our first witness in favor of this legislation. Thank you. And please introduce yourself before you begin.
Okay. Good morning, Chairwoman. My name is Emery. Before we begin, I can clarify on the question that you had about the requirements, if you'd like.
Please.
So to qualify for this program, you have to be a recipient of Mo Access in the first place in order to qualify for the grant. And then on top of that, you have the STEM requirement and that you must be in a STEM field. So if that answers your question.
Yes, that's how I read the bill. So thank you.
Yes, that is accurate. Well, I will begin now. Chairwoman Shields and members of the committee, my name is Emery Guveniler. I am a freshman at the Missouri University of Science and Technology, studying computer science and political science. First and foremost, I would like to thank the committee for their time and the chair for having this hearing. I am here today on behalf of the Associated Students of the University of Missouri, a nonpartisan advocacy organization that speaks for the 65,000 students across the UM system. STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, has become an integral part of our education system and modern economy. On a national scale, STEM supports 2 out of 3 every U.S. jobs and accounts for 69% of the nation's GDP. In financial terms, this means STEM generates $2.3 trillion in annual federal tax revenue. Careers within the STEM field have seen the greatest growth in the last decade, and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics expects these fields to continue growing at a rate of 11%, adding 1 million jobs to the U.S. workforce. The demand by students to engage in these programs is there. Among those entering into universities across the nation, interest in undergraduate and graduate STEM programs grew from 6% in 2014 to 11% in 2019, according to the 2019 Online College Student Report. Yet, college affordability and accessibility is becoming increasingly difficult for lower and middle-class families. The Institute for Higher Education Policy found that students from families earning $69,000 or less could only afford, at most, 5% of colleges and universities. In Missouri in particular, differential tuition due to the removal of tuition caps will increase the cost to obtain a STEM degree, further limiting low-income students from high-paying degrees and jobs. The UM system is working to implement a differential system to take effect beginning in the 2022-2023 school year. According to data from ASUM's annual platform survey, 20% of students reported that tuition increases due to differential tuition would potentially cause them to change degree programs. Students will either be priced out of STEM programs or be forced to take on additional loans, hindering their financial stability for years to come. To many students, including those in the UM system, the dilemma places unfair burdens on their young shoulders as they aim to better themselves through education and climb the social ladder. In the years meant to prepare students for the rest of their lives, students should not have to take on inescapable liabilities. Furthermore, Missouri is becoming an exporter of talented and bright students. Students are leaving the state after graduation, creating a brain drain in Missouri. According to a report by the U.S. Congress Joint Economic Committee, there is a 16% difference in education and skill between those leaving and staying in Missouri, placing Missouri 16th in the nation for highest levels of brain drainage. That same committee concluded in their research that states that fail to retain the most skilled of those born within their borders or fail to replace them by attracting the most skilled born in other states are at risk of economic stagnation. Missouri needs to keep its graduates and prevent the brain drain crisis from worsening. Ohio experienced similar levels to Missouri, 19%. And in 2017 proposed a program called the STEM Degree Loan Repayment Program, wherein the state repays the student loans of those eligible to participate in the program by making direct payment to their loan companies, capping the award amount at $4,000 per year for bachelor degree students. Ohio Representative John Patterson commented that this legislation will help incentivize STEM specialists to stay in Ohio, fostering economic development that will benefit our students, our business community, and our state as we strive to establish a workforce for the economy of the future. HB 2763 would enable Missouri to keep low-income and BIPOC students with a financial incentive. To a low-income family who is unsure of how they will pay for their children's education, $2,000 may be the difference between choosing an in-state tuition and going out of state or not attending university at all. In addition, students from out of state may choose to pursue residency in Missouri to obtain this grant, bringing in talented students, another fundamental problem Missouri struggles with. As an out-of-state student myself, aiming to obtain in-state residency, I would qualify for the Missouri Access Financial Program and can attest to the impact that this sort of grant would make on a student like myself. It would mean less hours working, in my case, for a grader as a class, to help support my family pay for my college and allow me to give greater focus to my studies and out-of-classroom experiences. This STEM program has the capability to lend itself to a workforce development program. With the high demand of STEM graduates, increasing enrollment rates in STEM is crucial to supplying Missouri's workforce with capable graduates to attend to the critical needs of the state. STEM occupations in Missouri are projected to grow by 10% by 2022. These jobs have a higher wage than 75% of the average income in Missouri, yet many went unfulfilled. According to the 2014 St. Louis Workforce Report, there were 23,000 job advertisements for STEM occupations, but only 2,044 job seekers for those positions. There is also a lack of applicants for high-skilled agriculture positions that fall under the STEM umbrella, a vital industry to Missouri. In 2020, there were only 36,000 qualified graduates to fill 58,000 new high-skill agriculture jobs. Leading students, particularly those that are low-income and BIPOC or rural, into STEM degree programs and thus into the workforce is necessary to develop Missouri's economy in a modern age. This legislation would help produce the needed graduates in those fields and help to grow the state's economy. STEM is the great economic equalizer in today's world. The social mobility afforded to low-income families because of STEM is unprecedented and incredibly important to support our students during this crucial crossroads of uncertainty. We respectfully ask for the committee's support of HB 2763 for the aforementioned reasons. If you have any further questions about the impact this legislation would have on the system students, I would be happy to speak to those issues. Thank you again for your consideration.
Any questions for this witness? Yes, Representative Pike, please proceed.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for that very comprehensive presentation. You mentioned that the students are leaving the state. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. So Missouri is experiencing a brain drain where qualified graduates who graduate from our schools are then leave the state. That's an issue that we have to address if we want our workforce to continue to develop and be able to provide jobs to our economy. One of the ways that we want to address this is through this program. Students have to be an in-state resident to be able to receive this program. And thus, if they receive this program, they're more likely to stay in the state after they graduate rather than leaving.
Okay, so you're saying they leave because there aren't jobs available? Talk a little bit more about why they leave.
So I don't have that research on hand, but I can certainly get back to you on that and answer that question in full.
All right, thank you.
So I do have a question. So where, you said you're from out of state?
Yes.
So where are you from? Where is your hometown?
Long Island, New York.
Okay, well, welcome to Missouri.
Thank you.
And you believe that once they come to Missouri, now we're a net importer of students to Missouri right now. We bring in more students that are from out of state than we lose to other schools when they go to the universities. And then you're saying that those students are leaving. Is it possible that they're just returning back home? And it's not necessarily that they're leaving because we don't have jobs, but they prefer to return back to their home?
That is certainly a possibility, but if we want to keep them here, this would certainly be a program that would push those students to stay in the state.
So you're suggesting that a student moves from out of state to Missouri to be an in-state student, and then they become they stay for a year and they qualify to be in-state, and then at that point in time, then we start funding them to stay. But there is no ties that they have to stay in Missouri, correct? With this grant.
Correct. There is no ties that they would have to stay in Missouri.
What would stop them from returning back home to their home state? Other than we've helped them come to Missouri, and even more so, because right now we have lower tuition than the surrounding states. That's why we're a net importer. and then I know, and that's hard to believe, but then we're going to bring them here, we're going to help them even more. What's going to stop them from leaving? I don't understand how this grant's going to stop people from leaving.
Sure. So the general idea is that with this grant, it'll help develop our workforce and show these students that there are opportunities here and that there are more opportunities here than if they were to go back home or if they were to go to a neighboring state. So that's kind of our point on that.
Okay. I would think that if there was something tied to this, that if you received a grant from the state of Missouri, you had to work in the state of Missouri for 5 years. I mean, if you had some, you could claim that that would be the case if you had some tie to this grant. But right now, we're a net importer of students to the state, and we're not, because our tuitions are low, they're still leaving. I don't understand how, by giving them this grant, that they're going to stay. The grant would maybe incentivize them to get a degree in this field, but I don't see how it incentivizes them all to stay in the state.
Yeah, so as I said before, it's more about first developing the workforce. So because these students are seeing that there are opportunities here and they're receiving money from the state, and our economy is being developed through those jobs and those students working in our workforce, then we'll be able to prevent that brain drain from happening through that. So it's really more of a net effect than the purpose of this bill.
Because my son went out of state for his master's in science. Was a STEM degree undergrad and grad, and came back to Missouri to work. So I mean, he came back home, and that's and so. Do you plan to stay in Missouri?
I do. I have absolutely loved my time here so far. So I do.
And you're a freshman?
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
You.
I think Representative Riggs had a question. Right?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I just want to go in a couple of different directions. So I've spent 2 years on workforce, so I really like what this does. We're in the process in my district putting together an innovation campus that addresses exactly what you're talking about here with ag sciences and doing our level-headed best to link up with the folks in St. Louis who are just going hog wild with ag tech and the possibilities within that field now. With GPS technology to start with, it just boggles the mind. We need to be ahead of that. But larger question, and to an earlier point, what is the enrollment of women in STEM in our university campuses today? I've been to Rolla, don't see a whole lot of women there. We've got a program in my hometown where we have a computer science PhD who's had a robotics program for girls, young ladies, up through elementary through high school, just to address that particular issue. How do we get these young ladies interested in this early on so it becomes something that is more amenable, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. So how does this address that gap, if at all? And what are your thoughts? And do you have anybody here that could address that from the standpoint of being one of those students and what led them into that field?
Absolutely. So nothing in this bill directly addresses that issue, but that is certainly an issue that we want this bill to also help cover. But there's not, and certainly an issue that we can have more discussions with your office on. But we hope that this bill would address that sort of issue too. The main concern of this bill is with low-income students in general. So those certainly women would fall under that in many times. So we can certainly have more conversations with your office on that.
Yeah, I would encourage that. And, at the same time, I get this, but also, the 2.5 GPA, that's not a given in some of the STEM folks I talk to. These are really difficult courses for a reason. You want people to be exact. But at the same time, I'm not sure this program goes far enough. I mean, I like what it does. I really do. But I'm just would like to see more of that and more of an emphasis on folks who are underrepresented, which are women and minorities, obviously.
Absolutely. And like I said, we can have that conversation with your office, and we are more than willing to have that. So,
all right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Representative Wyndham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To inquire.
Yes, please.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So, are you familiar with Missouri's scholarships? different scholarship programs that we have.
Yes.
How do you think that this program fits in with our other scholarships, namely A+ and what's the workforce development fast track? Fast track.
Yeah, so this program is different from those in that this one directly aims to address low-income students and does not go on a basis of what were your grades. So this program is only addressing based on your financial status and your family's financial status. So it is a different program in that sense. So it will address a different population of students in Missouri.
Okay. And this kind of, so, and one reason I asked that is because we spend quite a bit of money on state scholarship programs right now, and still not enough. Whether we're talking about just my personal opinion on Access Missouri should be more, which would take statute change, or whether we're talking about how some Bright Flight students are going to get their award for the first time ever this upcoming school year, hopefully, if everything goes right. So with that being said, you mentioned the tuition cap and that being lifted. So what are your thoughts on advocating for a tuition cap or lower tuition generally as opposed to new scholarship programs?
Absolutely, and obviously that is something that last session was repealed and that we were not happy to see repealed.
I'll pat myself on the back just a little bit. I think I was one of like 30 folks to vote against it. So it was a very popular measure, I think, because name, image, and likeness was on that bill. But sorry, go ahead.
Right. We obviously understand that tuition caps were removed, and we have found that many students have a lot of concerns about that and will be greatly impacted by that. There's a fair amount of research out there that indicates that differential tuition prices out low-income and BIPOC students, and that is the main reason why we actually took on this legislation and this platform, is that those students will be priced out based on differential tuition and the impact that differential tuition is going to have on those students and their ability to pay upfront for college and university.
So one quick question, I'll end it here. So I think a good way to sum up my question would be, do you think that this scholarship would be putting a Band-Aid on the lifting of the tuition cap and differentiated tuition? Should we go deeper and go back to the tuition caps and go back to how much the cost of tuition is in the state of Missouri?
I can't answer directly on if we should go back to tuition caps. That's not something that our board has discussed this year, but this is definitely a partial solution to addressing the costs of higher education in today.
Representative Pfeiffer, please.
Yes, a quick question.
Yes.
Last year, as we were discussing exactly the issue of lifting tuition caps versus the issue of tuition for lower income families who are sending children to college, we were told very explicitly that the university system would be working on developing more programs for those lower income families. Has there been any communication with students at UMR about that? Are you seeing any new kinds of opportunities for scholarships?
I cannot directly speak to that issue, and
But you've not received any communication about that?
not me personally, no, I've not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
We'll bring the next, well, is there anybody here in opposition? Informational purposes only?